Ladies and gentlemen, it is a very high honor and a privilege for me to have the chance to open up the final day of our conference looking at the European-Russian relationship with a very special keynote speaker. I think he's someone we've been looking forward to the last 3 days. In many ways, the icing on the cake, so to speak. After some wonderful discussions and lectures up until today, I really think in many ways today is the highlight. And we're really very, very much looking forward to the opening keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michail Kasyaanov was born in 1957 in the region of Moscow. He's one of the founders of the People's Freedom Party and former Prime Minister of the Russian Federation from 2000 until 2004. He initially graduated from the Moscow Motor Vehicle and Road Transport Institute and was a qualified civil engineer. Later, he was also educated at the Higher School of Economics in Moscow, where he studied trade and finance at the Higher School of Foreign Languages. In 1999, President Boris Yeltsin appointed Mr. Kasyanov to the position of Minister of Finance and incorporated him into the Security Council of Russia. The Russian government then managed to design and implement the first non-deficit budget of the new Russian in the new Russian history. In January 2000, Mr. Kasyanov became the first Deputy Prime Minister and also kept the position of Minister of Finance. 1 year after his departure from the government, Mr. Kasyanov started to vocally criticize Russian authorities and their anti-democratic drift initiated by President Putin in the end of 2004, and declared his intention to form a new political party to fight for liberal and democratic values against growing authoritarian tide. His recent book, Without Putin, that was written together with journalist Michail Kasyaanov, was presented to the public October 5th, 2009. In many ways, Mr. Kasyanov continues to perform as an opposition leader, and for many he really serves as a role model of, I think, someone really of tremendous courage, standing up at some points where it's very difficult, against all odds, and actually a great risk, to fight actually for greater human rights, freedom of expression, and more democracy and democratic reform in Russia. So in many ways, he's a man of tremendous responsibility at the moment, and I think many people are also looking to you with optimism and hope as one sees some beginnings of movements in Russia. So I think in many ways, you're really giving us a great gift by coming to Berlin and allowing us to learn from you, to interact from you. So ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to please join me in a very, very warm and a very, very sincere welcome for Mr. Michail Kasyaanov. Thank you.
Can I get some water?
Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is great pleasure for me to be here with you in Berlin this lovely spring day, and it is very important for you just being here as a young people trying to understand better what is the history and future of our continent is about, and how just you, a generation, very soon would rule all affairs on European continent. And to that extent, of course, relations between the European Union and Russia, it's a very important issue. I have a prepared big lecture to you for an hour long, but I understand that there is no need to do this. It's better just I have few introductory remarks to you, and then we'll have an opportunity just to discuss different questions so that we could interact directly to answer those questions you concern mostly. First of all, let me start with the understanding that important feature, what the Russian Federation is about, whether Russian Federation is a European country, whether the Russians are European, and sometimes by many it considered that Russia is far away from core European just existing roots, or Russia is far, even sometimes strange country, or sometimes people even say just that Russia is very alien to European Union. It sounds a little bit insulting to me, because just my basic position of my party and myself that Russia is definitely a European country, and all major values Russian constitutions designed based on those values all European countries have. Russia is a full-fledged member of OECD, and Russia is full-fledged member of Council of Europe. And all those values adopted in our constitution and these obligations of Russia. In the past, Russian Federation was born as a European power and has a lot in common, a lot of interacting with Europe in the past, and of course all those exchanges took place in the previous centuries, was demonstrating just interdependence between Russia and Western Central Europe. That not only trade and those raw materials Russia always provided to, but also human resource. And Russia was and is a great market. And today we have a great potential for cooperation. And in fact, when I was in our office, Prime Minister, we even had a joint session. The full cabinet of Russia and full composition of European Commission in Brussels. It happened once, but since that time we still continue to have annually a couple of meetings on leaders of European Union and Russia to discuss different aspects, to discuss international problems, international issues, topics, and also projects, mutually beneficial projects. In fact, Russia's interdependence, Russia and European Union, is evident and natural. Russia provides more than 30% of energy to Europe, and when we call energy dialogue, that is a very important part of our cooperation. And share of European consumption and Russia energy export is 70%, 70–80%. It means Russian energy materials, energy exports very much oriented to European consumption, and even European program for energy for the period of 2025 also rely on increase of imports from Russia of energy resources. And of course, we have a lot of things in exchanges and trade saying that we need technologies and expertise as centuries before, as it happened at that time, and Russia's interests very much concentrated on European countries and Germany in particular, and some other very much industrialized countries in Europe. In fact, we have a great potential, and we achieved a lot. And not only in economy, but also in relations between societies. Visa facilitation programs launched by my government at that time improved considerably access of Russian people here. Just Russians can obtain visas for as long as 5 years, and it's much more simpler for Russians to come here and to see what is, in fact, the relations is between people and relations between person and authorities, and even just what the relation is between person on the street and policeman. That's important for Russians just from different cities to understand how those values we all devoted to implemented and practice. Unfortunately today we don't have everything just bright in our relations, because of the simple reason that in Russia we have not quite democratic regime, I would put just softly. In my expressions in my party's congress or just on manifestations on the street, I use much stronger words to explain what it is about. But in fact, we facing with problems. And cooperation between the European Union and Russia is suffering a lot. All those 4, I would say, directions developed by my government, say 10 years ago, 4 so-called spaces for cooperation. One of them economy, another one humanitarian, third one external security, and the 4th justice and freedom. Cooperation in those areas just simply appear to be today as, say, bureaucratic exchanges, nothing nothing producing more than 4 people as compared with what our goals were when we launched those. And of course, several gas supplies cuts of troubled relations heavily. It appeared to be that despite of the fact that we all want Russia to be viewed as a reliable supplier, just permanently on the contract, but it happened to be that because of different blackmailing and different problems in the relations with the Ukrainian government and Belarusian government, Russia's authorities made a decision to make these cuts off, which is absolutely unacceptable in the 21st century. And other things also troubling relations. For instance, the government not staying on line with international obligations and our own constitution, like human rights, protection of human rights and respect of human rights and respect to people's right to have free and fair elections. It is important to you to understand that Russia, despite of the fact we by constitution a democratic republic and the country with the normal European values, in practice we have a different reality. Within short periods of time, the regime, Mr. Putin in particular, had chosen, say it was 2004-2005, to change considerably overall internal policy and as a result external policy as well. Internally it appeared to be that Mr. Putin used national tragedy in Beslan, where there was a massive killing of children by terror attack. He cynically used this event simply to explain to people that we're surrounded by different enemies who are dreaming to deprive Russia of its sovereignty and to take our natural resources, etc., etc. Soviet-style propaganda. As a result, for the fight with terrorism, he offered just so-called, I call it, anti-constitutional reform, which means re-registration of all political parties and just considerable reduction of quantity of parties from 45 down to 7 parties. And those parties who kept their registration were chosen by Mr. Putin himself. Just cancellation of elections of regional governors, as it was for new Russian history, and announced just human rights organizations as spies of the United States and Great Britain and other countries, and just squeezed the whole political environment and public environment and civil society, growing civil society, in fact, was conservated at that stage. That was the simplification of the methods of operating with the country, and unfortunately, that's already led us to deep problems in general in development of my country. To say it more, it's appeared within short periods of time that we don't have separation of power. Parliament was no longer independent, and as the Speaker of the Parliament said, that Parliament was not place for a debate, for a discussion, just simply to stamp laws, and that's appeared to be that we lost this important feature of democratic state, and appeared to be we don't have independent judiciary. And now we have a big problem with the people's understanding that people don't believe and don't think that the court is a place where justice takes place. They don't approach to court to settle their problems, if any, with their relations with others or with the state. That is important feature, just demonstrating just how mentality of Russian people works now, just and how just authority operate with people, with the society, and appear to be that we don't have free media. Now, just last year, we started to get because of just booming of internet and additional technologies, we started to get some independent voices of media. But now we have a television channel with the name Dozhd, Rain, and it's mostly devoted to young middle-class people. It's very important. That's for generation like you, just with all those features of interest you have, just different from us, for instance, and that's important for audience just to pick up in such a manner, such a style, important information and analysis of that. That's very promising development. And say 1 or 2 radio stations also for 1 or 2 years. But in general terms, of course, the censorship, self-censorship exists, and the important point is that Russia today is, in fact, consists on 2 main I would say, parts of society. One of them, that big cities where people have free access to internet, and young people and business people and small entrepreneurs, small businesses, they mostly live in big cities, and that is in fact supporters of my party. And other part, just small towns and villages where people continue to believe that everything was said on the television channel #1 is real true. They don't use internet, and they have no any other source of information even to compare, and they continue to believe, like in Soviet Union, that all those propaganda, that's real true. That is the problem, and that is actual Mr. Putin's support in the moment. And in fact, last elections just demonstrated this clearly, this division. But a little later I will go in details, if you wish, answer your questions, what's happened the last year, last 6 months in Russia in terms of all those manifestations, etc. So, talking about needs and problems Russia facing now. First of all, in economy. In economy, we have such a problem that, despite of the fact that it was evident even 10 years ago, when I was Prime Minister, that diversification of economy is absolute necessity, and my government launched a special program on this regard, so that to use all those funds which we accumulated as high prices or growing prices for export or for oil price. Despite on that, this program was forgotten because oil prices started booming and reached just the highest level nobody ever seen. In fact, when I was in the government, the oil price was 18, 20, 25. When I left the government, $25 per barrel. And at that time, just we produced the system and adopted as a law that all revenue beyond the price of $25 per barrel should be accumulated in a special government fund, not in the budget, but a special government fund. And this fund is supposed to be as a I would say, a softwarizing mechanism for any disturbance from abroad, I mean international markets, and also to finance important reforms. In fact, at that time when we had the price $20 per barrel, we had non-deficit budget. As Mark correctly said, just I launched for the first time in Russian history first non-deficit budget when I was finance minister, and later when I became prime minister, just for all those years, and even after me, the Russian government ran non-deficit budget, and international reserves just achieved just the third largest in the world after China, and I think, don't remember the second country, doesn't matter much, but in fact, and budgetary reserves were high just to finance important reforms. Important reforms, the crucially important reform, for instance, that's pension reform. Absolutely necessary reform. My government launched the reform with introducing the saving elements, so that people would feel themselves less dependent on the state and could, during their working period, just building up their future, their pension. Now just this reform was stopped. And again, the authority would like just to feed pensioners by hand, so that to demonstrate them they are dependent every day from federal authority. This is absolutely unacceptable. In fact, during last years, dependence Russian economy of oil and export of oil and gas not reduced but increased. Increased considerably because since my departure, no single reform was launched by the government. No single, and even those which were started by me or completed by my government was put in reverse. Pension reform I mentioned, that's one of the examples, but some other two. And all those, I would say, main attitude to economic development, like encouragement of entrepreneurship and support of small and medium-sized businesses, was stopped, and attention of authorities were concentrated on oil and gas. And as you maybe heard, redistribution of property started heavily, and even pressure on businesses and putting some core business people in the jail, on fabricated judges. That's already became a practice in my country, unfortunately. Today we have not only problems in economy because increase of government expenditures annually by 20–30% already put Russia on such a dependence on oil price that if any fall of prices down to say $70 or $60 per barrel, which could be the case, in fact, could lead economic and social situation in Russia just to collapse. To avoid this, we need changes. We need changes in my country, and in fact, we facing the situation when Russian people already lost another important feature of democratic state: free elections. We don't have free elections anymore since the year 2004, when Mr. Putin decided to control access to politics of every person, in fact. And I already mentioned that elections of governors were cut and re-registration of political parties took place, but since that time no single party has been registered in Russia. And different attempts of different political parties, including my party, we had three attempts to get access to elections we were always cut of elections because we just little different. We're not within this system what Mr. Putin just operates with. And last year we started to register for ourselves that some changes in the society started to take place because of youth, because of internet, because people already just got tired of all those abuses and the corruption, booming corruption which achieved the level none of living generation in Russia ever seen such level of corruption. Of course, corruption was always a problem in Russia, but in other countries too. But such level of corruption never existed in Russia or Soviet Union. And therefore, people just cannot already keep patience on that. And lawlessness, growing lawlessness of police and even killing people in police, that's also important feature. Right now, people just on the streets, they're simply afraid of policemen. If they see on the street the policeman, they like to cross the street just to come to the other side, not to meet with the policeman. That is important feature. Corruption and lawlessness and human rights abuses. That is reality of today's Russia, unfortunately. Last year, people understood that time to have changes. Middle class understood. Those people who have access to internet, who travel abroad, who see how the same people live in other countries like Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, whatever, Austria, or whatever countries, and compare their life in Russia. Of course, Russia is a great place to make money. It's because it's a growing economy and an enormous potential exists, but other part of the life is completely unacceptable. And the middle class, those people who, in fact, already built up themselves, and maybe already built up the future for their families. They have good jobs, good salary, they have, of course, everyday internet access, and they're already in, and they cannot even imagine their life without internet and social networks. And they have their cars, they have flats, etc., etc. They understood that there is no respect by the state to them. No respect. Lawlessness every day. And in fact, when we started already to understand that elections in December 2011, last year, parliamentary elections already close, and people got another signal, our third attempt to get registration of our party, but we would like to represent the interests of middle class. And that third attempt to get registration and access to elections were cut by authorities. That was the important signal that no independent party got registration, and us, we were last in this row last July. And moreover, in September, Mr. Putin and Mr. Medvedev announced their switch of positions. Without any elections, they in fact just informed population. You guys should know, soon we have parliamentary elections and presidential. We already settled everything, agreed, and that is our verdict to you. And to that part of society, middle class young people, they couldn't accept this. Simply couldn't accept, because just they're not, say, living in a brutal country somewhere, just in a remote area. They have another style of life, and decided to make a lesson to Mr. Putin. And during 2 months, October and November, they just had internal internet discussions, etc., etc., what to do with those elections, and decided not to vote, or to vote, but for any other party, but not for Putin's party, to make a real harsh time for Mr. Putin and his party just in the parliament. They voted for communists, hating communists simultaneously. They voted for Zhirinovsky, hating Zhirinovsky. They voted for others, just simply not to give their vote to Mr. Putin. And in fact, they installed their monitors through this legislation through different parties, and controlled as observers all these processes. And in fact, they achieved the result. All sociological polls and exit polls showed that Единая Россия, United Russia, Putin's party, achieved a level only 30–35%. But the 5th of December was announced 50%. That's what the middle class young people understood. Their victory on their result, their goal achieved, but was stolen by Putin. And that moved, there was a third point. The third point just to appear in the streets and demand. And that for us, even it was unpredictable and unexpected. We didn't even expect that 100,000 people would appear in the streets of Moscow. Of course, we planned for manifestation like 10,000 people, what just political party can call people for the protests on the streets. But when we saw 50,000 people, and then 24th of December was 100, or even some people say 120,000 people, that was something. For us, for understanding that society is being changed, or is changing, and for Mr. Putin, understanding that he's not controlling the country as he pretends or wanted to be viewed. And immediately, in the end of the year was a response. Just they announced a political reform. That was what our party demanded. Free registration of political parties, restoration of election of governors of regions, better access or free access to presidential elections, and the most important thing, just postponement of presidential elections, which was the harshest, the most difficult point for Mr. Putin to accept. But not political activists, but civilian activists, people who didn't want to be associated with political parties. They simply say, we would like our rights to be respected. We would like free elections. We would like fair elections. And they didn't follow our recommendation in the beginning as politicians, and they simply voted or just demanded free elections. Mr. Putin immediately picked up this motto and said, free elections. I, Mr. Putin, too for free elections. Not free, fair elections. Let's control fair elections, presidential elections, and that's led to the situation that all observers, in fact, helped to Mr. Putin just to build up some kind of legitimacy. Although, despite of the fact that elections took place not free, but elections took place on the 4th of March, Mr. Putin didn't get in reality 50%, as it was announced 63. And that was, again, disappointment on that time already, not another blow of protest, but disappointment of middle class that they made a mistake. And what to do? All elections finished. Authorities don't follow the demands. They don't announce early elections on the parliament, and presidential elections took place. And the important thing is that U.S. administration for the next day recognized the victory of Mr. Putin. That is important feature for international affair. That's if there are questions, I can discuss those issues too. But it's important that 50% or almost all political parties recognized the victory. Only us, People's Freedom Party, said it was not legitimate elections. And a little strange that Communist Party said the same. We'll see just whether they will appear on inauguration, by that confirming that legitimacy of Putin, or if they ignore, that will be just a real position. It means they getting independence from Kremlin. But we'll see. We'll see what happens 7th of May. And that's what I'm saying, that Mr. Putin on manifestation confirmed his victory, but even after announcement of this victory in brackets, instead of calling for consolidation of society, he started even more over to divide, saying those liberals, all the spies of the West, and we patriots would like to stay in our motherland and will defend our oil and gas, etc., etc. Our third way, that's important thing, and but we know from the history that third way always led to the final confrontation with the outside world. And in our history, we at least know just 3 times what the result of those third way was. That was reality, Mr. Putin's view and his team, how to deal with the society at the moment. But there is a positive result of last year. The positive result is that, as I already mentioned, society is changing, especially young middle-class generation. Not poor people, not poor young people, which is the problem, of course, on the corners or on suburbs of big cities. Just a problem with the employment of young people. People cannot find access for education, for job, and that is the problem. But for middle class, that is waking up. And an important thing is just during all those manifestations, there was no single broken window. There is no single smashed car. That other people, not unemployed people who has nothing to lose. That was, as I said, middle class who behave differently. And they do behave differently because just they would like to settle all their problems not through violence and manifestation, but through elections. But they lost this mechanism. Future, I think there could be a couple of two scenarios. One of them, which is from my perspective less likely, that Mr. Putin would start somehow relaxation process in the political life, but which could lead to introduction some elements of free elections. just as a making a lesson out what happened just during last year, and in this case we could have a gradual evolution of the regime. And the second scenario, that Mr. Putin continues to believe that everything in this life is tradable and everything is purchasable, and he will try to buy this part of society by just making another silent contract with people as it existed before. You people make your money and you spend and travel whatever and spend your money just in a manner you want, but don't step in politics. That's not for you. And now just they already started propaganda that political parties and politics, that's something so bad, so dirty and wrong that normal people should not step in there. They say that only those who didn't find themselves in business or on a state service or just in a science or whatever, in arts, only those people who cannot find anything positive, just they're left with only one, just to be in politics and to be in political activists. That was propaganda building up. It means that Mr. Putin doesn't want to have evolutionary development. He believes that he could lock and keep the grip over the society and trying to buy somehow just the different activists, etc. But I think that it's not a long-standing policy, and in any case, I think we will, within 2-3 years, we have bigger changes. We have bigger changes than someone could predict. We, as a political party, People's Freedom Party, going to start new internal policy for us that based on the assumption that we'll get registration, get access to elections. And this understanding appears as on the basis that one appeal of a Republican Party, which is part of Parnas, People's Freedom Party, was considered positively in European Court of Human Rights. And European Court of Human Rights made a ruling that cancellation of registration of Republican Party was illegal. And lucky authorities and Mr. Putin still believe or still stay on a position that they shouldn't be contrary to international obligations and in terms of implementing decision of European Court of Human Rights. And the government would, under this pressure, would register Republican Party. That's what we use for our access to elections, and we will be building up a new environment so that to let young people, young activists who want to be in politics to grow up, so that new faces to appear, so that this new, I would say, wave of civilian and civil and political activity could be capitalized somehow in politics. And we start with the local elections and regional elections later this year and next year definitely. So with the expectation to have a great potential and ability to win in elections on the Moscow city government or Moscow city parliament, which will be in 2014, and we continue to demand early federal parliamentary elections. With the young faces on front, I think just it's absolutely possible to consolidate efforts and desire of growing middle class. I think we still have an opportunities. That's why that is a source of my optimism. And in any case, just think Russia is a great country and a great partner to European Union. And in any case, I will do my best so that these natural interdependence and cooperation and so-called strategic partnership, which was my expression during my time in office, was announced that Russia and European Union has a strategic partnership, so that that partnership would appear to be a reality. Thank you. And that, and thank you very much. And this lecture you can put on your website if you wish it.
Excellent. We will do that. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Kasyanov. A very insightful lecture.